Man, we need a version of the intro where we play that whole song.
No doubt.
I love it.
No
He's
doubt.
the King of Kings, Vicky Joy.
Hey,
What's going on? How you doing over there, wherever you're at?
I'm doing good. You know, I lied to you. I told you I'd have a different background tonight, and I was just so overwhelmed and pooped and behind that I did not leave. I'm leaving tomorrow morning. So,
Well, I forgive you.
always.
Thank you for your confession.
You're welcome. Thank you for showing a sample of grace to our lives tonight.
Hey guys, what's up? This is Through the Black. Throughtheblack.com is the website. That's where you can go and find all of our archives, our links to, of course, the teachings of Russ Disdar, our links to information about Wilfred Wong, our links to our apparel, our movies. Okay. By the way, there's a sale going on right now on all the Ezekiel 8 stuff. $5 off of hoodies, $3 off of t-shirts. So you can go over there. Some people are already taking advantage of it. We appreciate the support. We appreciate the prayer. Don't forget, and we're going to be talking about it tonight, the Out of the Darkness conference is coming up very soon. It's going to be here before you know it. Vic, I cannot believe that we are 18 days into 2023.
Whoa. Wow.
It's so crazy. So yeah, here we are. Conference coming up, guys. We're going to be talking about this tonight. So Vic, we have a special guest on.
We do.
And matter of fact, 2 weeks ago, exactly, this special guest was standing right by my side. Okay. He's not here in person tonight, but we already had it set up that this guy was going to come on. Of course, I'm talking about Luke from the Shatter Ops team. He's coming back just to talk about, I don't know, a lot of stuff. Investigations, freedom encounters, the work that we do, the deliverance. I'm going to ask him just about some of our trips that we've taken into Pennsylvania in the past, the Amish trips, and we've had some adventures together. It's been pretty interesting. But hey, Luke, come on in. And what's going on, man?
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. How are you guys doing?
Awesome. Great to have you.
Yeah.
So,
right
man,
on.
I'll tell you what, I remember meeting you. Did we meet in Lima, Ohio?
Tom, I'm sad to say I can't remember exactly when we met.
I think it was.
I feel like I've known you forever because like you said a minute ago, we've been through so many interesting and fun and some startling things.
Well,
yeah, I don't remember when the first time that I met
think
you.
It was because that's the place where I saw these two young bright-eyed boys just like ready to go, right? They're like, hey, yeah, we're going to be doing this and stuff, and Russ Disdar, and we, and I thought, oh, dude, do these guys know what they're getting themselves into?
We had no idea.
Kind of excited. So let me ask you, we're going to get into all this, but did you know what you were getting yourself into?
I can't say that I did. My quick story, for those who haven't heard, how I got involved was really, we were building our house, and I was, a couple years earlier, a number of years earlier, it's like a lot of these guys' story, at least on our team and other guys that I've heard, it's like, the Lord just took me to one, I was diving into his word, right? And for once in my life, I'm asking for wisdom and understanding, and I'm devouring the word, and I'm actually wanting to spend hours in it, which, before growing up, I grew up in a Christian home and so forth. It was like, it was like a chore to be like, all right, we would have a retreat or something, and I would, hang on for a couple of weeks of trying to do a Devo, and then I would just drop it, right? But then, I was convicted, like, here I am, like 30 years old, and had never read the Bible for myself. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to do it. So, I've started in Genesis, and I was like, I'm going to read this whole thing through. And I was like, all right, Lord, I want you to show me what you want me to know, not what other people have told me my whole life or whatever. And, I would say I knew the Bible more than the average Christian, but I was still biblically illiterate, really, because I had never read it for myself. So diving in, doing that. And then, he just started opening doors, and I was listening to people, a number of years later while I was, building my house. And I had seen Russ. I think I'd heard him on Hagman Report or whatever. And I just started diving into this guy, Russ Disdar. And every time I would listen to him, the Lord it was just like, he just wouldn't let me go about it. So, fast forward a few years, I tried to contact him, and that was a really hard thing to do, obviously, for people who have tried to contact Russ over the years, and he would just get inundated with emails. So I get it now, but before I was like, man, okay. So finally I got a hold of this guy, and he was coming down south. And I was like, hey, I can drive over. I'd love to meet you, And finally he emailed me back and said, hey man, all right, I'll try to find some time. And I went up to this conference, and there was a line of like 30 people waiting to see him, even during the off time. And I was like, man, I don't know if I'm gonna get to see this guy or not. But he actually stops everybody and is like, hey, I got an appointment here for a few minutes. We'll catch back up later. And I was like, oh my goodness. So we got to talk for, I don't know, it was only 10 or 15 minutes at the max, maybe 5. It seemed like a good bit of time. I felt like I was taken from him to do it. He was like, okay, here's another email. I want you to email me here. And we'll try to connect or whatever. And I emailed him numerous times on that other email and never heard anything. And I'm like, all right, Lord, am I not hearing from what, you just won't leave me alone about this? Like, I felt like this is something that, he's pressing me to do, which is pretty interesting, that I felt that anyway, because, and I had no idea what I was even praying, but when I was starting to dive into the word a little bit, I said, all right, Lord, obviously everything I have is yours, right? Me, my family, everything, it's yours. And I'd ask him to say, hey, I want you to show me the seen and the unseen. I had no idea what I was even talking about, right? Grew up mainly Baptist. So, had heard of, maybe once or twice in my life of somebody even being possessed. And I had no clue what that was, but I'm praying that he would show me the seen and the unseen. And so he was starting to kind of reveal some stuff to me through his word. Right. And then listening to, the whole crowd, like Steve and LA and Russ and everybody. But then I said, I'll do what others won't or what others can't. Like I had that in my prayer journal, like praying that I'll do what others won't or what others can't. And then he starts tugging to me, I listen to Russ. So then back to my story. So I'd email a bunch of times I didn't hear. And I was like, all right, Lord, maybe this is just me. Maybe it's not you pressing on me. Maybe it's just my knucklehead self thinking this would be something that, might be something you're calling me into. I was like, all right, this is it. I'm sending one last email. And if he doesn't respond, then I'm moving on to something else. And of course, I sent that last email, and like immediately he emails me back and he says, hey, sorry, come up to a conference that, up in Ohio. So I went up there. Coach Red came with me, one of my good buddies that's on the team. We've been, doing this over 6, I think it's going on 7 years now. So he took us out to dinner or whatever. I guess he saw something in us a little bit. And he said, I can't remember if it was a week or two later. He said, all right, y'all come up. We're going on a REAP trip. And we were like, what? You know what I mean? He just asked us to jump in, and, it's not something that you dip your toe in, which I really didn't know what I was getting into. And we went on our first trip, and that was when we were doing a lot of stuff over in the middle Pennsylvania area in Big Valley and all that. And it was wild.
So
and for us,
Yeah, Luke. Okay, for anybody that doesn't know, and if you're coming in late, we're talking to Luke from the Shatter Ops team, and we just kind of jumped right into it. And he's been sharing his story about how he got involved with Russ Disdar and the Shatter the Darkness team. Okay, now the Shatter the Darkness team is where he got his feet wet and where he started. He just kind of said how he explained how it happened, and I think the cool thing just about your timeline is kind of the time where the Lord was calling me in a different direction. And I was working with Russ, I was traveling with Russ, and then I kind of slowed that down because there were changes in my family. I had kids that were getting older that required more time, and I was spending, more time with my youngest son, and that was real important. So I backed off of doing stuff, and I started doing stuff on my own, filmmaking and stuff. And the Lord sent you guys in, which was amazing. And we kind of, I was kind of like, man, I want to hang out with these guys. I want to meet these guys. And I just wasn't able to go on as many trips back then. But you guys stepped in, hit the ground running, and you have been ever since, right? So,
Yeah.
Russ, he just basically pulled you in, recruited you, and yeah, some crazy stories. We're going to get into some of them tonight, but
well, it took 2 or 3 of us to make up for Tom Dunn. So.
That's a good one. I appreciate that, man. You keep those coming, okay? So, anyway, you know what? I just the cool thing about it, and maybe some listeners here were down at the St. Louis conference or the St. Louisville conference down in Southern Ohio. And this was, it's coming up on 2 years ago now. We were all there, and it was Coach Dave put this on. And it was kind of cool how the Lord just inspired us all to step in. Russ got sick, and we all kind of stepped in and took over the conference for Russ. And, it's amazing how the Spirit of God gifts us with the gifts of the Spirit. He knows who's got what, and he puts us wherever we need to be, and we work together. You know what I'm saying? We every time we meet up, we pick up where we left off last, right? And it's almost like as if no time has passed. We obviously are all devastated by the loss of Russ, and I don't know about you, but I wasn't ready for that, and I'm still getting used to it. Just because he was the leader, right? And he was the director of all these things. And even though I wasn't full time with him before, I would get pulled in. Tom, come on up. You know how Russ put you on a guilt trip, right? Like, come on up to this. So anyway. So what's going on in your mind maybe on that first REAP trip? Like, can you share any of the things that you experienced? Obviously, you don't got to go into detail about locations and people, but you're riding with Russ. You're hearing the stories. He's preparing you. Prayers taking place, and you're going into wherever. Can you share anything about that?
Yeah, I mean, there was quite a few of us on this trip, and we had some specific things that we were going to do. We were they had met with multiple victims, and we were going to go meet with a few more. And we also were taking a young lady out to Allenstown, Pennsylvania, to meet with some cold case detectives. So I'm pretty sure this was my first trip. So I'm listening to her story. Like, Russ is like, hey, and I was sitting with him, and she was in the front seat, and she was kind of telling her story. And I was just, floored just by hearing her story. And I could just see the emotion of what was going on, right, in her, just trying to, tell her story. So one, I was just like, wow, this is, kind of on my first trip. We're, a victim of some real stuff, some real heavy stuff that went down. and she's kind of telling her story, not necessarily just to me, but just kind of going over it with Russ again, because at some point in the next, day, she's actually going to go, sit down with some cold case detectives. So, that was, from my first kind of jumping in, I was like, wow, this is pretty heavy and intense. And then we were there working. And to be honest, I mean, in some parts of it, it was like being in a TV show or being in a movie. As you know, Tom, I mean, it's not like a nonstop. It's not a huge win every time we go do stuff. I mean, because we're investigating and doing.
It's not like a Mission Impossible movie, right?
Yeah, I mean, this first trip on, which I guess the Lord just hooked me real good on it. I mean, it was like being in a movie, man. Coach and I we were at this event that this local community was putting on, and we had some guys that we were looking at there, and there were some games and stuff going on, and we're playing little stupid community games with like a couple of these people that we're watching, and we're just like, what? And we were just playing it up, just being ourselves. And man, one of these guys' wives are even just talking to us and, asking us a bunch of questions. And we were, from out of town and And it was like, oh my gosh, I can't, we're actually, talking what's going on. And the whole 2 or 3 days was just action packed with stuff. And man, it was like I was in.
let me ask you this. Do you remember maybe a specific moment or maybe a time where it kind of clicked with you, like, this is real? This is real. Yeah. There is a sophisticated network of underground Satanists, and they are trafficking people. They're doing rituals. They're casting spells. They're they're connected with powerful people. I mean, was there a time when it just kind of like clicked with you and it got real?
Yeah, I mean, really, even in that first trip, it was real. One, hearing this victim's story, like sitting in the seat right there, she's in front of me and she's telling this story. And then in this same trip, I mean, we're looking through some places and doing some investigation stuff, and we find this at this house we're actually looking into. I mean, we find this robe, this black ritual robe, and where I was just like, holy smokes. And there's been so many times that even though I am there present, I'm still like, is this really what's going on here? Mm-hmm. Because it's just hard to fathom, because obviously I don't know anybody personally that would do that kind of stuff. So it's you question yourself. You're like, is this really what's going on here? But I mean, really just got smacked in the face with it that first time because of one, like finding some stuff that led to the stories of what some of the victims were telling us specifically. And then hearing this, the case we weren't necessarily working, but then hearing this other girl's story of what was going on, because she was about to go meet with some cold case detectives in Allentown, Pennsylvania. So really kind of getting hit like right off the, right out of the gate with some reality of what we were dealing with. And, I mean, Russ was also awesome about, just praying through things. And, all I can tell you is that on that first trip was probably when a lot of that stuff went down. Like, my head, by the time I get back, my head's spinning, and it's kind of like, all right, Lord, like, this is real. And obviously, you pulled me into it. And, the first time I met with Russ at his house before we went on that first trip, really him just basically expressing, like, you need to be spiritually ready, right? Probably more spiritual sound than I ever thought I could be at one time. But I felt like the Lord had readied me for that. But really looking back, even a few years before that, there is no way I could have kind of stepped into to what he had me stepping into. And, even at times now, it's like, man, I don't feel as qualified as Russ and Gene and some of these guys have been doing it for 40 years. But like I always say, it's like, Jesus doesn't, call the equipped, he equips the called. And
Yeah.
I know he called me to do it and move in it. And, I'm not a tier 1 operator. I'm not a theologian minister that's, had 40 years of experience, but I do know who my God is. and that's what I stand on, and that's what I move in. So, just like both of you guys, right? It's like, hey, does the devil have a reason to fear me? No, but I know who Jesus is. And that is his power and authority that we move in.
So look, I'm curious because, this is one thing, when you got Apostle Paul's out there who was like, hey, to live is Christ, to die is gain. If I live, I live. If I die, I die. But what'd your family think of this? Like, because, when you sign up for this, you sign up your whole family. Like, you got to warn parents and kids and spouses, like, if I'm fortified, if I'm built up, the enemy's going to go after somebody I love, So what was your family's reaction to this? Did it frighten any of them, or were they skeptical?
Yeah, I mean, even speaking, overall, even just extended family of mine, there were, some that were kind of hesitant, like, what are you getting into? And then, thankfully, a lot of my close family has been like really supportive because, thankfully, most of my close family they're strong believers as well. So my younger brother has been a pastor for many years. He's been overseas in Dubai and a lot of places where he was over there kind of as a track coach doing things, but I mean, he's, lived in some sketchy, a lot of times he would drive off with these guys, not knowing where in the world he was headed. So, kind of hearing that stuff and, my family just praying over that as well. But I mean, I have definitely a side of my family that's been strong believers for a while and had a awesome praying grandmother and an awesome praying mom. So I know that I'm covered in that. Not that, there aren't some, scary moments or some sketchy things that we find ourselves into, but just, personally rest at ease knowing that, I fear the Lord and the Lord alone, and nothing else is worthy of my fear. And then that, I got people that are supportive and praying for me. Right. And, praying and not just me, but our team and, even you guys that are willing to, step out there. So I feel like as long as I live under the shadow of the Almighty, that, hey, if the Lord allows it to happen, it's going to happen, good or bad. My job is to, especially, when I'm talking to people that are kind of interested in what we're doing or whatever, it's like, for a dude, it's pretty good, I think, to know like what my job is to, I'm not righteous or holy, but he is. And my job is to try to live and walk the way he wants me to walk, because I'm going to be doing some things where I need that protection, luckily I don't, I hadn't dove into a lot of things that had grabbed a hold of me or I was addicted to or whatever, but knowing that like, hey, you need to walk the walk. It's just kind of a good check on a daily or monthly or yearly basis. Like, you walk the walk, because what you're going to be stepping into, you need to be really close to the Lord when you're moving and doing things. So it's a good kind of push and a reminder of me, and even, guys on the team, kind of mention that too, of like, as long as I stay where I'm supposed to stay, it's completely up to the Lord. If I'm foolish enough to start doing something or opening doors or whatever else, then, me or, extended family or whomever could, pay a price for that. So that's my job, is I'm going to stay close to him because I don't want any crease or anything, because I know I'm going to need him completely. So I'm going to stay there tight with him, because I know he needs to cover me and what we do. And you guys as well, right? You know that we're the same deal. It's a spiritual warfare. If I'm in the mix at the moment, or I'm here at the house,
The great author E.M. Bounds, the author on prayer, and he wrote many books on prayer. To paraphrase him, he said, prayer is the real work, evangelism is the cleanup. So what we do at home in our prayer life is really the most important work. And, you know, obviously devotion and drawing as close to God as we can, knowing his word. And so Luke, you and I got the privilege of spending time with Russ and working with him in the field. And even in the comments now, so many people have found out about Russ after his passing. And they're like, oh, I wish I could have met Russ. I wish I could have met Russ. And, you know, of course, all of his teaching is out there, and thousands of hours of, you know, free material, just golden, you know, information from a guy who's done this for decades, right? Nobody like Russ. And I've read a lot of other authors and people that have done similar stuff, but nobody like Russ Disdar. So for those people that didn't get to know him and, you know, they want to know what it was like to work with Russ, can you share something that you learned just by kind of watching him? Because, you know, he's the real deal, right? Like, he was the real deal. And it wasn't just a voice, you know, on the radio. He lived the life.
He did. I mean, you know, he was fearless. I mean, he was straight up, you know, fearless, which, you know, when you first start to kind of get into this, it's like, you know, it could be a little bit overwhelming. Like, man, these guys that we're, you know, pushing against, these aren't, you know, just a local Joe Schmo that's just, you know, running some stupid little game, you know. And he was, I mean, I feel like I had an opportunity like to meet Paul or somebody, right? I mean, literally that's kind of how I felt about it, just trying to soak up as much as I could. I mean, these, you know, the rides across, you know, hours of driving, going to different places. I mean, just hitting him with questions like nonstop, just, you know, soaking up, you know, stories and just the wisdom that he had. And him even saying, look, I mean, we went through a lot to get to where we are now. I mean, he goes like, you know, we did some dumb and stupid things because it was an area that no one really had got into before. So, you know, understanding that and understanding that he literally relied on the Lord, you know, and he would, and you could tell like he was the real deal. He really had a strong walk with the Lord. But I guess what would probably surprise people the most is how just joyful he was. And he was fun to be around. I mean, like we would have so much fun just on trips and things. And he's, you know, cutting up as much as anybody, even though like in an hour it's about to be on, but yeah, we're, you know, kidding around and joking around. And he wanted for people to enjoy it and have fun. And, you know, we mix it up and whoever's riding with who, and just, you know, hearing stories and just asking him questions, not even just about specifically our work, just, you know, theological questions that we wanted to know, and just his deep wisdom because he had spent so much time with the Lord and he continued to, right? So it was inspiring to me, be like, I want to be that close and I want to spend that much time and walk the walk and be the real deal. So, I mean, he's just a great inspiration, and I feel honored to get, you know, to have spent the time that I did, before the Lord took him. I mean, he wanted him home. Selfishly, I would have loved to have been like, hey, just another month, just another year. I had so many more questions and things I needed to learn. But, you know, the smack of, you know, like, hey, Moses is gone. Joshua and Caleb, let's go. Like, let's go take the land.
Next up. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
you know, and maybe you've seen him do this, Luke, but he would love to like offer like an extra tip. Like, I'm going to give you an extra $20 like tip if you play this joke on somebody here at the table. You ever see him do something like that?
He never personally did that to me, but I have heard stories.
Yeah.
For sure.
So yeah, he wanted him to like, hey, do something to this guy's food. I'll give you, like an extra $20 or something like that. I'll tip you
Well,
big time.
So we'd be like driving back and we're crashing out. Everybody's passed out because it's 3:00 in the morning or something, and it's freezing cold. And he'd just roll down the windows and put the window lock on, and he'd like freeze us out for 5 minutes. You know what I mean? I'm sure it was probably because he needed to stay awake too. But if people were like crashing out on him, he was just like, So I mean, he was just fun. He really was.
And that last trip, and that I was on, and that might have been one of the last ones that we were all on together, maybe. That happened, and it was one of those all-nighters. We were working, and I couldn't stay awake. I actually had my son with me. I was so glad that my youngest son got to go and experience one of those trips. And Luke, I can't remember if you were there or not, but some of the crew was there, and yeah, it was a definite adventure. I like how you said that. Joy, that's Russ, full of joy and just smiling and cracking jokes or playing tricks one moment, and then it gets dead serious. I'll tell you the thing that I really appreciated about Russ was kind of how calm he was. You know what I'm saying? And he had kind of like a poker face. He never let anybody, see, in the moment, like any emotion. You know what I'm saying? Like if somebody came in and the person is, struggling, strongholds, possession or whatever, and his prayer, I mean, he never really raised his voice and got excited during prayer, just praying, pretty like he was very, maybe a way to describe it was even tempered. You know what I'm saying? And that's one thing that I learned from Russ is like, you don't got to raise your voice. Demons are not hard of hearing. The Lord's not hard of hearing, but there's nothing wrong with getting emotional or excited during prayer. But that's just something that I was impressed with. And then sometimes, on our trips, I'm like, man, I can't, many times I went with him, I still can't tell if he's sleeping or praying. So, but yeah. And I saw that, whether we be on a train or a plane or something. And I was like, oh, I thought you were sleeping. You were praying. So that happened many times. But
yeah, and Ryan, you got to go on some really long. You got to go on some really long trips.
What's that?
Like Germany.
I said, and you got to go on multiple really long trips.
Yeah, we did. We did, and I sure wish you would have been there in Scotland with us. That was a crazy week. That was a lonely week.
Yeah, I did get to go to the Switzerland trip and go to the CERN and all that. So that was pretty cool, man. I treasure that for sure.
No, well, that's amazing. Talk about that trip.
Yeah, I've never heard about that.
So we were over there for a conference. So Landon and I that are on the team now went. Big John, which he doesn't do a lot of stuff with us, just because he's busy here doing things and being a great author and writing that book or whatever. But we went. So it was Tim Alberino in L.A. and Russ. It was just awesome. The fact that because we were there in Switzerland, doing the conference, which was an awesome conference. There was definitely some intense stuff that went on. There was like a guy that was like a warlock that was coming in, and when LA and Tim spoke, he kind of really wasn't paying attention much. But like when Russ would get up there and speaking, and this is one of those moments where it's like, is this really happening? So tell the story correctly. We were just kind of watching. A few of us were, just doing what we do at conferences when we're not, being necessarily a part of it, is we're just, watching to see who's watching kind of in the back and running some security and stuff. And there was this dude, like if you could picture what a warlock looked like, long dark hair, just, whatever. He's sitting there, and it was one of those guys that were kind of like, just keeping an eye on this guy. So he's kind of sitting toward the back. And when Russ starts speaking, he starts kind of doing some like little, he's gibbering and whatever else, kind of pointing and doing some stuff. And I was just kind of like, man, is this dude trying to, cast something or whatever? So, I right away, I start just, going at it in prayer. Like I just start targeting the guy in prayer, and it was almost like I slapped him in the back of the head. He literally turned around and looks directly at me. You know what I mean? And I'm just kind of like, did that just happen? Even though, I mean, it was just me and this guy, evidently this warlock dude who was trying to cast something on here. And this was like the first day, like it was literally like I smacked him in the back of the head and he just snapped around as fast as he could and just stared right at me. And I'm kind of like, oh. So one of the other guys kind of had noticed it, and we're coming over and we're just, we still praying at him, whatever. And, I don't know if it was a lunch break or whatever, and the guy leaves. And to carry on the story just about this dude, he went and sat at a different spot after the break. Kind of same thing. Other guys were speaking, and he was just kind of minding his own business. But when Russ would get back up there, this time he opened some little thing he had, and he was and Big John sat right behind him. And Big John, I mean, my goodness, the Joker's 7 foot tall, so he's a Nephilim, so he's a little intimidating. So same thing. He kind of gets into it. We're all praying, and John's right behind him and prays it. And literally, he stops and just turns right around and looks at Big John, and probably looked a little scary himself looking at Big John. But it was just one of those things. It's like, is this really happening? Like, I started to pray against this dude and what he was doing, and he felt it, right? So, and we had a few other things going on where people kind of felt some stuff or whatever, but overall it was an absolute amazing conference. And then we had a couple days before, and I think maybe one day after, that we got to go to CERN. So the fact that, what I didn't know about, CERN is like, it's its own country, basically. Like, I was considered like a diplomat from the U.S. to go there. Like, it was kind of like, what country are you from? I had to show them, all, forms of ID or whatever else. And I don't know if they ran a background or whatever else, but like, I'm there as a U.S. citizen on the grounds of the CERN. It's kind of like Washington, D.C. or the Vatican or whatever. Like, it's its own country when you're there. But, to think it's like, wow, I got to go to the CERN with Russ and L.A. Marzulli.
Oh my gosh!
And
What'd you do there? What'd you do there, Luke? Were you just outside, or did you see anything inside, or did you pray over the grounds, or what were you doing there?
Yeah. So yes, we were praying, but the people who had set up the conference had a connection to a guy who was a scientist there, and he came up and met us. The guy wasn't a believer. Of course, we're asking him a lot of questions, and I remember like we stood in front of the statue of Shiva, and we're kind of taking some pictures, and Russ is over there. We were asking him a lot of questions, and he was quite frank, and a lot of the questions we were asking him, he didn't know, but he knew enough to go, yeah, I'm not really sure what we're looking into, but yeah, Russ is asking him, okay, you're sending stuff in, the stuff you're getting back, like where it's come from or whatever else. But, overall, Russ is just sharing the gospel with him. And it was pretty cool, man, to see Russ witness to this guy. I mean, we were doing other stuff, so I didn't hear all of it, but we were peppering him with a lot of questions, and he was quite honest and told us a lot of stuff, we didn't know about, like who really ran, and he was like, the Italians ran. We're kind of in charge of a lot of stuff. Yeah. So
yeah, I was going to ask you, is it like so compartmentalized there that even the people that are there don't really know exactly what's going on, or do they know what's going on?
Exactly. Like they're only working on their little piece of it, and kind of understand overall some of the things that they were trying to do, but knew nothing, didn't know any detail about their, like, that's not what I'm working on. I'm just working on this. Again, we only had opportunity to talk to one of the scientists, but he was pretty informational. But yeah, you're exactly right. It was just, everything was compartmentalized, where I don't think anybody could put the overall what they're really trying to work on into a real good synopsis. But trying to open and Higgs boson, and then being able to open a black hole up and, you know, and
Yeah.
all that stuff. And obviously they're building an even bigger one there that was going to come online at some point in time. But, you know, just because you can do stuff scientifically doesn't mean you need to be doing stuff scientifically.
Exactly.
It seems
Wow.
lately with all the, you know, quantum physics and all that stuff, it's like, you know, we're dabbling into a lot of stuff that, you know, we shouldn't be. So
Yeah, I agreed. That's fascinating. Awesome.
Yeah, Luke. I want to go wherever you want to go, and then we can always come back and revisit stuff. I hope we get a chance to talk about just a few summers ago. We went deep into Amish country in Pennsylvania, and some interesting stuff happening over there. But I want to mention Shelly Disdar real quick. I know that you stayed at the house a lot, and you probably got to know her a little bit, and her name came up. Russ's wife came up in the chat just a few minutes ago. I remember being in Texas, and Coach Red was there, and I didn't know him real well, but I knew that he had worked with Russ, and him and I just immediately got on real good, and we're having conversations, but I still didn't know him, and I forget there was some kind of a situation, and Shelly was there, and I mentioned something like, okay, we need to cover this, area concerning the conference or concerning something that was going on with Russ. And Shelly just immediately gave her endorsement to Coach Red. And that's all I needed, right? She was
Right.
just basically saying, okay, this guy's okay. He's all on board, he's top level, and he's good to go. So I was like, okay, cool. I didn't know, I didn't know who I was dealing with, because I hadn't been around spending time with you guys. And then it was just a few weeks later that I got to know you when I went to North Carolina, I think. So to a conference over there. And I was like, okay, I think
that's right. It was the we were in Hickory. There was
Hickory, right. And
we were in Hickory, North Carolina.
But can you just say just a few words just about your impression of Shelly Disdar?
Yeah. Well, one, I mean, she was so sweet and serving. Like, I mean, being at the house, and because we're from out of town, so going up, and we obviously would stay there. Definitely stay there my share of nights. I mean, and she was overwhelmingly hospitality and just the graciousness. And man, I mean, one, she's a prayer warrior. Two, she is just so sweet and friendly, and so supportive of what Russ was doing and what we were doing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, my impressions of her is, man, she was such a sweet lady. I love her to death. Right?
Well,
I mean, she treated
like fantastic cook.
Anybody that came on the team, you had her full endorsement, and you had her support as well, and you had her prayer covering as well, and she let you know that. And I got to spend a lot of time with her, hanging out at the table, years ago, and just coming up and hanging out or waiting on Russ to finish up something, right? And my kids just got such a kick. My daughter got a kick, and my son even got to spend some time with Shelly Disdar, and we still share Shelly Disdar stories to this day, and just smile and laugh at the way she would just talk about a family situation, or especially about Russ, right? Like she would tell the other side of the story, and I don't know if I could do this. I don't know if I could tell this story, but one time they were on their way to Texas, and Russ had set the GPS, and he set it wrong. And they were on a long trip to Texas, and I forget how far. It was like they were 8 hours into the trip. And then Shelly said, when we were still in Ohio, and she's like, you need to check the GPS. And he had it set wrong. And They lost so much time on that trip. And Russ was like, I said it, just don't worry about it, you know. And anyway, stuff like that. And of course, I love the story that Russ says, hey, we need to get a weed eater. And she's like, we just got a weed eater. He's like, we did? She's like, yeah, it's out in the garage, you know. So Russ couldn't remember that they had gotten a weed eater, but all of his brain storage area was used to you know, just keep the information about cases and information about, you know, people that we're working with and trying to help and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, he was so sharp with pulling stuff out.
Yes.
I mean, he could go so deep into things, you know, just on a whim, the names and the times and the people that he could connect just on a whim, man. It was just impressive. You know, I hope I can do half of that, you know, a few years from now.
No, well, it's amazing. And sometimes a few weeks would go by and I would talk to him on the phone and he was like, yeah. And he would rattle off all of these new cases and all these new connections and what was going on. He's like, you got to get up here. You got to get up here, man. And I'm like, oh, Russ, he always put me on a guilt trip, you know. And of course, you know, he's where was it? He wanted us to go to the Mother of Darkness Castle. Do you remember this? This was one of the places he kept saying that. Yeah. You got to go. You got to go. And that's one of the things he was saying even weeks before he passed away. So,
yeah, I mean, the case of, you know, there's a new podcast on Le Monster or whatever, and it goes through that case. And man, that's just some bizarre stuff. Matter of fact, we had some people that came to the conference in Switzerland from Holland and Belgium or whatever. And, you know, they were kind of getting into some of the stuff that went on, and some of them were DID. And yeah, it was pretty interesting, especially after that. It kind of renewed the fact that, like, we need to get over there and get into some stuff. And unfortunately, that trip, or, you know, going to Rome and the Vatican, we didn't quite make it to with Russ. So we'll see what happens in the future. Maybe Tom will lead us on a trip over there.
Sign me up.
So, Luke, you were an active member of the SIIU team, and I was a kind of a not as active as you guys were, but, you know, we would all get called in, right, to be a part of this. Now, your team is still active, and one of the biggest questions we've gotten in the last year, you know, in several months is, what's going on with Russ's work? What's happening? How do we support it? And we didn't have an answer for a while, but we do have an answer now. There is a team called Shatter Ops, and you guys are, you know, this is the continuation of what Russ started. Okay, can you share what you can about how you got to where you're at now? It took a while, and you're finally up and running. And what are you going to do? What's the plan for this team?
Yeah, so, you know, even the last few years, when Russ was still with us, and obviously he was the head running the show, you know, he and I had a lot of conversations specifically about, okay, how can we be better at what we're doing? You know what I mean? I think he was to a point where he felt like he had some really solid folks on his team that he knew were dedicated and had spent enough time with us where he was willing to say, okay, let me start delegating some of these things, which, I mean, for years and years and years, I mean, it was all on him. Not that he didn't have other people helping, but I mean, it was just natural that people wanted to talk to Russ. They wanted to email Russ, and he had a lot of that background in cases in his head, right, that he could just rattle off and do. So, you know, having these conversations with him the last few years about, you know, hey, you know, starting to work a little bit on the website, kind of delegating, like, all right, a couple of you guys are really good at this piece and really good at this piece. And even having some conversations with a full team saying, hey, how many of you guys would be interested in if, the funding was there to do it full time. So some of those conversations were already taking place a little bit. So we were starting to try to everybody work, well in the lane that we were doing. I mean, we all feel the call to help victims and, be prayer warriors and do freedom encounters. And, all of us are more than capable of doing the investigative piece and all that. But, it's just, some people do more of this or that. So we were already kind of starting to structure a little bit about this and that. I mean, obviously it was a complete shock, and it left us kind of reeling a little bit, for sure. But we had probably in that 6 months before, actually for the first time, actually had gone and done some trips without Russ being there the whole time. Which was, something the years before, like we never even would have thought of, but it was just kind of like, yep, all right, you guys go, like, you guys have been working this, y'all go do it. I'm going to try to get up for a day of it or whatever. So some of the newer cases, he had kind of said, hey, I'm here. I want to know it about, what's going on, but, I trust you guys enough to kind of go up there and get some boots on the ground and do some work. So, wow. Thankfully, right? I mean, the Lord knows what he was doing, right? Because if we hadn't have done that at all, it would have been really hard to go, okay, now we're going to go on our first trip without Russ. Like, what in the world? You know what I mean? But he gave us the opportunity to go on a few, knowing that, hey, we're communicating with him, but we were able to kind of step out and do that. And looking back, it's like, all right, the Lord knew exactly what he was doing, because I'm like, who am I to be, leading some of this stuff or whatever else, right? So we were, one, it was, just the shock of it all. And, even asking for a long time was like, all right, Lord, why? Why did you, let this happen? And obviously from a personal standpoint, selfishly, you're like, man, it shouldn't have happened that way. But we were able to continue to kind of jump right in, and continue on those cases, because we had already been at some level running and driving them a little bit. Again, the Lord knew what he's doing. So it was able to take a little bit of like, all right, we gotta press on and keep the work going on the cases that we were already driving and doing. So in that aspect, it was awesome, because we never really stopped. Obviously, it brought our team together pretty tight. I know, Tom, I think the very first meeting that we had after he had passed, you were there, and there was a lot of talk of like, okay, what we're going to do. And it just took a little while to wrap our heads around how are we going to structure and move forward. Everybody was still kind of doing their own little lane and pieces, but it was like, okay, at some point here, we need to go, okay, how are we structuring? Just from the back end of things, and how we do moving forward. So it took way longer than we wanted it to, but doing all the back end stuff and getting that going. I kind of drove that a little bit, from kind of structuring us and how we do it. I mean, the cool thing is how awesome everybody on our team is. I mean, like, the girls and the guys that are on there are absolutely, amazing. I mean, Pastor Gene, he's been a part of doing what he's been, with Russ for years. He's been doing it longer than anybody with him. And he has kind of at times been a little more in and out, depending on if he's pastoring a church or whatever else, kind of like you, Tom. There was times that, the truth is, like, hey, when we were really getting in the mix, Russ was trying to go, let's get Tom up here with us. Tom can come, we can't let him miss out on this fun stuff.
I know. I think he put you guys into guilt tripping me too, because I would get calls from you guys like, "Hey, I'm coming to town. Are you going to be there?" And I'm like, "God, dude."
Oh, man, that's dirty.
Just added a little bit more element of fun and excitement when Tom was there.
I'll bet.
So, hey, some people in the chat are asking about your website. When you go on the Shatter Ops website, what are people going to see there?
Well, not a ton right now. So his old website is still up. I mean, we're kind of operating and managing that. And if anybody's been there over the years, I mean, there is a plethora of information there. The hard thing for people is to kind of navigate it because Russ did most of it himself. So you would not say it's a modern website. However, there is so much information to get through there. Like you could spend weeks diving through all that stuff. So what we've done is try to just do a really simple one, just a little information about our team and what our mission is. Not a lot of depth in there as far as because we still want to have the things available on his site. And we are eventually going to slowly start moving things that right now people are wanting as far as some of the specific training courses and all that. Right now, it's just an overall, hey, here's who we are. Here's what we're doing. Just kind of from a overtly Christian standpoint. Here's the verses that talk about, exposing the darkness and working with victims and healing and all that stuff. And then just a place where the people who supported us in the past could go to and continue to support us. And, truth of the matter is, I mean, that's something that we got to dive in and work into, not something that I have had a lot of experience doing. But, for us to continue the work, I mean, obviously it takes funding. So that's something that we got to kind of jump on to be able to get some of that, expensive of, getting people where they need to go to be able to do the work they do. One of the most interesting things to me looking back on it is it had to be either the first or second time that I ever went on a mission, a trip with Russ. On the way back, we're probably, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes back, to Canton. And it's super late. And he looks at me and he said, "Have you ever thought about doing this full time?" And I was just like taken back. I was like, no, it's never even crossed my mind before. But, it was just something that he, pushed on me like, have you ever thought about doing this full time? And it's like, I wanted to be like, did you get a word from the Lord? Like, why did you ask me that right now?
Where'd that come from?
Kind of made me nervous. I'm like, am I like right now, am I supposed to step in this full time? But, it's one of those things that now that I think about, it's like, all right, this is at minimum, the role we're playing right now, probably a part-time deal. Eventually maybe the Lord's going to call me to do it full time. And there's a couple of, folks already that still have their own lane. Like, Jean's a pastor. Sherry does her own counseling stuff, but she's a big part of the team and he's a big part of the team. And, Coach Red, I mean, he does a ton of stuff as far as following up with emails or whatever. We'll see what the Lord does, but, a calling to have a possibility of, having more people doing this, more of a full-time deal, because unfortunately there's no shortage of work to do. I feel like I could do a ton more, but, right now I still have another job where I'm, trying to make a living and trying to figure out, all right, Lord, how do you want me to, transition and do this? So, anyway, that's just, quite honest, openly where we are. I mean, we're still full go, have a lot of cases and trying to help a lot of victims from doing Freedom Encounter work. And been, it's been great. And that's the fun part, to be able to see Jesus literally heal the people who have just even been born into some horrific stuff. So the counseling side is always like, joyous to watch him move and work. And then, diving in and trying to expose what's going on. And then really wanting to put a stop to what some of these folks are doing. I mean, obviously you guys are no strangers to Satan's plans and schemes and how he uses people that just use people. So,
Just a few more questions as we kind of wrap it up here. But, you and I, of course, we're still going on adventures together. You recruited me into something a couple weeks ago, and it was like, I get a phone call.
They got
and,
really interesting, really fast.
yeah. All of a sudden, my plans change, like just like that, right? And you're coming over and sleeping in my library, and it was like, okay. When I woke up this morning, I didn't know all this stuff was going to happen, but here we are. And the next day, we
Right.
were hitting the road and kind of doing, what we've done together in the past. And of course, we were down speaking with a victim / survivor, and I loved watching you talk to this person that needed help. And what I saw was somebody that had been trained and worked under Russ, because you were speaking into this person just the way Russ would, with full of confidence, knowing that no matter what this person has been through, that they can receive help from Jesus. And
Amen.
Can you just kind of maybe speak to that? Like, how that's kind of a crazy place to be at, because we've not went through 8 years of schooling to be any kind of a therapist or anything like that.
Right.
How can, how are we able just to be able to give these people hope, the way that we do?
Yeah, I mean, and truly it's because, kind of like what I mentioned earlier about, hey, there's some, sketchy stuff we're doing, is like having confidence in, I know who he is. And I've watched him work. And if we do our part, he will do his part. He will keep his promises. He can heal the broken. He does. So being able to, sit back and confidently tell somebody, no matter what you went through, Jesus, as cliche as it sounds, Jesus is the answer. Like, he will show up and do his part, because he does it every single time we're working with somebody. He has not failed to show up and work and move. If somebody's willing to just open themselves up to letting Jesus and the Holy Spirit move in the moment. Like, there's nothing special about who we are, right? It's just the fact that we're in him, and I'm confident, very confident in who he is. And I know he'll show up. It has nothing to do with me whatsoever, besides the fact that he has given me the power and authority, and he wants me to walk and move in that. Because he holds up his end of the bargain. He really does do it. So you're right. Like, seeing Russ be so confident in the way he speaks about who Jesus is, and if they will just find their identity in who he says that they are, I know he can heal them no matter what they've been through, and have an opportunity to see it so many times. I mean, I remember, like, one of the first times I was with Russ and we were working with this girl, and, as you know, or just tell your audience real quick, I mean, some of these people that have been dabbling in stuff, had stuff done to them, sometimes that veil is broken where they can see things that I have never seen personally. But working and asking the Lord to come and move, like, this is one of the first times early on that literally, he's asking Jesus to show up and do some things, and she actually sees him. And I was I was about to be undone, because I was just tore up the fact that I am in this room and this girl sees Jesus. And, sure, you kind of question, you're kind of like, I don't know. But I mean, I've actually experienced that so many more times since, to have great confidence that he will show up, because he always does. And really, that's kind of how we get to it. Just like Russ says, like, hey, there's nothing special about me. It's just you get to work and start getting some experience. That's the only thing, is just experience. But when you see that, it gives you such a confidence, one, in the Word of God, and you start to dive in and devour the Word a lot more, because you see that, like, he is real and he's powerful, and these words that won't ever pass away, he's given them to us to be his hands and feet here. Like, everybody needs to be moving in the word. You know, it's kind of one of those things. It's like, hey, you need to be being discipled or discipling others for one. Just if you're that's just your reasonable service, right? If you're a believer, it's like you don't have to jump into the lane that we all are necessarily in. But hey, there's going to be people that are called to do it because the Lord needs more boots on the ground to do stuff like this. But every believer, like, you know, just as a whole in this country, you know, we got to quit playing church. Like those days are over, and they are fastly fleeting away where there's no more time to play church. You need to be in the word. You need to either be discipled or being discipled. And the Lord needs your talents. Like the kingdom of heaven is, you know, he needs you, right? He doesn't need any of us, but he actually needs you to be the hands and the feet. So, find out what gifts he's given you, right? Use your talents, find out what gifts he's giving you that he freely gives you, or ask him to give you some more so you can get in the fight somewhere. There's so many ways that we need to be, you know, pushing back. I mean, I think they call it I'm not a theologian, prophetic ministry. Yes, we still need the compassion and the love ministry too, but there needs to be people, men and women actually stepping back and pushing it back. You know, putting a standard against this evil flood that's coming in and devouring our nation and devouring our kids. We say we love our kids and we want to do everything that we can and give our kids everything. But yet as Christians, I mean, we got to get some backbone and actually care that our kids are being lied to and fed lies and perversion. And if Christians don't step up and push back against it, it's just not going to be done. So, I mean, just everybody that's watching, whatever, just a challenge to you. He is in need of you somewhere. You need to figure out where he wants you to fit in. Take it to the Lord. I mean, you know, and just especially for men, I mean, I'm a coach, so, you know, I get fired up trying to, you know, raise up men. It's like, you need to, I mean, we need some guys with some fervor and some righteous anger that will step up and push back, that know their God and can live and walk in truth and in righteousness. We're not perfect. It doesn't mean you're never going to make a mistake, but you show up and he'll get up and show off. So
I love that.
Yeah, he not everybody's called to do what we do, but do something. Vic?
Yep.
Yeah. Luke, I think it's so cool what you're talking about with the woman who saw Jesus, and you were saying that this happens on more than one occasion, because, you know, your whole journey started with asking God, I want to see the seen and the unseen. And it's so encouraging to me, even though we know he's everywhere and we know he's loving. And it's like to just know that there's a lot of times when we're doing ministry and Jesus is there and nobody sees him. The person we're ministering to doesn't, we don't. And we go home, we might even be discouraged, like, hey man, I was preaching the gospel, like that was so awesome, and no response in that person. And we come home with our tail between our legs, right? But that is so cool to like kind of have the veil turned back there for a minute and just know that we can be confident that when we're ministering, regardless of whether there's fireworks or a big red bow at the end, that Jesus is there. And I just think that's cool that you know, the beginning of your journey was such a unique prayer that you would be shown the things that are seen and unseen. And I can only imagine that's one of many examples of how that prayer has been answered.
Yeah. I mean, that's the deal. And it's nothing, you know, special to whatever. It's just that I feel like the Lord allows us to be able to see that, you know, because I mean, we see some pretty dark and ugly stuff. Right. But it kind of balances out when you're like, man, he is who he says he is. I mean, you know, you grow up watching these sci-fi movies and you feel like, oh, you know, you do this little thing to be able to get some power, to be cool or whatever else. It's like, man, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords is using my, you know, redneck coach butt. You know what I mean? I mean, he's actually using me and who he is. I mean, I just am in awe of him and watching him work. So, I mean, that kind of really balances out a lot of the just really ugly and wicked stuff that we end up seeing. But yeah, Vic, I mean, it really is cool stuff just to watch him work and just have the confidence to know that he is there, even if they're not seeing it. And hey, you're planting a seed somebody, I mean, we can't bring anybody to the Lord if the Holy Spirit doesn't draw them, but our job is to just bear witness to the truth, always and everywhere. And he may give us opportunity to spend a ton of time with somebody or just a few minutes, and just being in tune with him, like my sheep hear my voice, like being in tune with him, and just be willing to be like, okay, I'll do that. I'll say that. Even when we're not necessarily comfortable for it, because he shows up, and that's the cool part.
Yeah. Awesome.
Luke, I just want to say that I appreciate the Shatter Ops team so much, but I think you and I have had a special bond since New York. And I mean,
I don't want to know.
So that, I mean, obviously, and you have went out of your way to kind of make sure that I'm included. Okay. And you pulled me into meetings that you guys are having, and we've just kind of iron sharpening iron and just kind of sharing. And even after, the passing of Russ, you're calling me, you're like, hey, I want you to come up to this meeting. I want you to be involved. That means the world to me. God, I think, is going to use our teams, and I think we complement each other very well. Speaking of which, when I mentioned to you guys a few months ago, hey, this is what we got going on. We're doing a conference called Out of the Darkness in Brookville, Ohio, March 31st, April 1st. Immediately you said, we want to support you. We want to be there. And the Shatter Ops team, now you guys are going to be down there. You guys are going to be helping us do ministry. We're going to pull you in also on one of the breakout sessions, so you can just kind of do a little bit of teaching there, and we'll have more information about that later. But just when we go to a conference and ministries taking place, people are kind of, what happens is people get signed up, and then when we're able to meet with them or minister to them, that's what we do. But can you just kind of just share any anticipation about the conference?
Yeah, obviously, Tom, yeah, right. I mean, to feel like, man, we're close and we're brothers. I mean, and the Holy Spirit has done that, right? Just because we're on the same wavelength. But I mean, all your team. I mean, Vicky and and all of them. I mean, Michelle's helped me on cases, doing stuff, and I mean, I feel like even though we all haven't spent a ton of time together, like, we kind of feel that kindred spirit because we are on the same team and we know who Jesus is and we're both in him. And there's almost that connection that we get, even though I hadn't spent a ton of time with all your team. But I mean, Colleen's been great. I mean, I've done a little bit of work with her at the conference before, but just really kind of bond together. And I mean, one is through him, and obviously what Russ did, kind of bringing us all together and what he's inspired you to do moving forward. So I 100% anticipate us, as long as we're, doing ministry on this earth, that we're going to be, tied together in what we do. So I appreciate you inviting us. But I kind of feel like, hey, you're on our team, we're on your team anyway. So wouldn't hesitate for a second to do that. Yeah, I mean, looking forward to, excited about it. So, whoever, all of us, wherever we need to fit in and speak, if it's, Landon and I talking about some of the stuff in the breakout, and I think Sherry's, set to speak.
Yep. Sherry.
Yeah. We're looking forward to it, and, whatever we need to do, however we need to do it. I mean, we got some, just like you do, we got some awesome folks on our team. Not 100% sure we're all going to make it, but we're going to have, if not all of us, a lot of us will be there, willing just to serve and speak and work with people, like, to be able to sit down and doing some freedom encounters. And again, just back to what we were talking about a minute ago, Jesus will show up and he'll show off.
Well, there's going to be a lot of time for fellowship and just meeting people, and anybody here watching can recognize you at the conference. And again, we want to mention that there's going to be a sign up sheet to for ministry, and the way that we've done it in the past is you put your name on the list and you give us a phone number. We send you a text. and we tell you where to meet us, and you're next in line, and we pray for you. We minister to you, whatever it is. We want to see strongholds broken, people set free, people healed. And that's what we're going to be. That's what we're going to be doing there. The Shatter Ops team and the Through the Black team, as well as the whole time a conference is going to be going on. We're going to have Greg Reed there. Luke, you were on a couple weeks ago. It wasn't really planned out, but you were on, and Greg Reed was on the other end. He's going to be there. You mentioned Sherry, Pastor Mike Spalding, Coach Dave is going to be there. Okay, our team, Vicky Joy, is going to be there. So it's going to be an amazing time, folks. Throughtheblack.com. You can go over there and get signed up for the conference. I don't know. You know what? I talked to the hotel recently, and there's still some time left, but there is going to be a time when they cut off the hotels and where you get the discount, because, and I'm not sure if that's going to be. It might be a couple weeks before, but it could be even longer than that. So if you're thinking about getting the deal on the hotel, I just want to mention that to people. Make sure you do it sooner rather than later, so you guys can get the discount, because I think the discount is like even $15 off what the normal price is. But Lieutenant Luke, any final words or any final message to anybody out there? I mean, what does the future hold for the Shatter Ops team? I mean, we talked a little bit about everything, but just as in a kind of a final message, what is your guys' mission?
Yeah, I mean, we're just looking forward to continuing to doing what we do. You know, one, we want to just, you know, be open to whatever the Lord has us do. I mean, just even all our team, just the Lord just using us even more, being better, right? I mean, we're called to be excellent in everything that we do. So as we structure and move forward, just, you know, the Lord working and moving and showing us how to, you know, work with victims and get to the root of things even faster and change their identity in Him. And then, you know, still moving forward on a lot of stuff that we do as far as investigative stuff and exposure, just relationships, just being able to build a lot of awesome relationships to people that are in the work already. And, you know, as we grow in the Lord, right, just to see Him do it. And as we grow as a group, and helping even other groups, you know, and other people that are called to do it. You know, it doesn't mean they got to run around with us necessarily, but being able to be able to teach and give them the resources to step out and do things, because it's needed. And you know, there's not a state or a town that it's not needed. So you know, kind of looking forward to doing that and being able to teach people in Freedom Encounters. And, you know, the conference is going to be a good way to be able to do that. So I look forward to being able to meet a lot of the people. And yeah, we're there to work and help with people that need it. And look forward to the fellowship. It's going to be fun.
Folks, we want to see people trained. We want to see people inspired to go back to their home state, their hometown, and just, you know, you don't got to do what we do, but we need people to step up in ministry. We can't do it all. We can't go around to the whole world, okay? Our team, we have great teams, the Shatter Ops team, the Through the Black team, but we can't cover the whole world. We need more people trained, and that's another reason for the conference, okay? We want ministry to take place, but we want training to take place. Luke, thank you so much, my friend, for coming back on and just giving us all an update. We need to get you back on next season before the conference and just do this again. So keep that in mind. Yeah, we want to pull you back on here. But appreciate you so much. Appreciate the Shatter Ops team. Folks, yeah, don't forget, you can get signed up for the Through the Black Out of the Darkness conference at throughtheblack.com. Go over there, check it out. We got junk on sale, all that stuff. We appreciate you. Hey, tomorrow night, Colleen is going to be with Kenny C. Friday night, Audiotopsy, Like a Stone by Audio Slave. Man, so some good stuff there. And Saturday night, Pastor Sean is going to be talking about the owls. Folks, it's going to be good. God bless you. We'll see you next time.
All right.